All right, today we're going to take a deeper look at the KISS versus Beta flights and see what we see in the logs and HD. We're going to look at how both flew on defaults and then how both flew after being tuned. Okay, so the first up here is taking a look at KISS versus Betaflight on the defaults. So this is obviously on this side the KISS defaults, and this is the Betaflight defaults. Now both are being logged with Betaflight. So again, I had two flight controllers on the quadcopter. One was the KISS flight controller that was doing logging, but then I also had a Betaflight flight controller that was doing logging at the same time. So both were always logging regardless of which was flying it. And for both the flight controllers, the RX signal or the receiver signal was being split and fed into both. So as you're moving the sticks, that signal is going to both flight controllers and being logged. One is actually flying it, the other one's just recording the stick movements, and then also it's recording the gyro, which is just recording the quadcopter's movements. And I think it's something new because I don't believe anybody else has ever done that with KISS or Flight 1, which we'll do next. Now, KISS does have logging independently, like I just talked about, but it has some issues that really restrict how kind of useful it is, just because the set point and how it tracks the sticks isn't really scaled correctly. And you can see that right here. So this is the KISS log for the defaults. And if I go to any given move here, so you can see this is a sharp roll move. You can see that the degrees per second right here for the set point is just doesn't even make sense. It's negative 61,461 degrees. So you can see it's just not scaled right. I've actually talked to Alex about this, the developer for KISS. What is fed from any of the flight controller firmwares into the logging is not the actual set point. That is actually calculated. It feeds in kind of the raw data, and the Explorer, like Black Box Explorer, knows what kind of rates it's using and then converts the raw data into the degrees per second based on whatever rates it's telling it to use. So the main issue here is that it's not, the KISS logs isn't conveying any kind of rates, so it's just the raw data, I guess. So anyways, I'm gonna send him some stuff and then he's gonna take a look at that and maybe get that fixed up. But until that time, you can see we have KISS logs here, and your P term and D term and I term, you can pull stuff away from that, but the concept of how well is the quad tracking the sticks, you just can't tell. If you do have KISS logs, you can tell a little bit what's going on here, but just by comparison. So if I go to the same location of this move, so this is the same move, you can see Betaflight is accurately tracking the sticks, and we get up to my 1,000 degrees per second, which is what I had it set in Betaflight using KISS rates, and then also in KISS using KISS rates. So I had the rates set the same. So you can see what the gyros, the quadcopter is actually moving in relation to the rates, and then you can look over here, and you can see how this is overshooting here, and you can see how it's overshooting here, how this is still humping up here. So you can, if you only have KISS logs, you can kind of thread the needle, knowing what we know now, or based on this data, this testing I've done, that when you see it kind of go up and then it continues to hump up and then back down, you're exceeding your commanded rate. And you can also see it here if you look at the numbers right here. This is going up to 1,146 degrees per second. So you can see that it's overshooting the 1,000 degrees per second by keeping your focus on the numbers. And then you can see that same thing over here. See 1,134. So we're at 1,141, 1,136. So I'm not at the exact same spot, but you can see there's 46. You can kind of thread the needle if you only have KISS logging to see if it's really actually tracking the sticks. But I'm going to pull this aside for now, just because it's so much simpler just to use the Betaflight logs and only use the KISS logs if we want to try to thread the needle and kind of look at PI and D independently and see what's going on there. So you can see that, on defaults, there's a lot of delay here, between the commanded move. When I get to 1,000 degrees per second, you know, by the time it gets to 1,000 degrees per second, we're talking like 91 milliseconds of delay before it even gets to that roll rate around 1,000 degrees per second. Now it overshoots that for a while, so it spins up to 1,100. I think 46 was the highest we saw on the other one, and then it comes back, and you can see there's all kinds of overshooting and oscillation. That is just a telltale sign of weak P-term. So your I-term is driving a majority of the move here. And I think that's what people feel the most with KISS. I think that was what kind of base flight did back in the day, because they didn't have filtering. So they didn't rely on the P-term and D-term as much because it was too noisy to fly with that. So there was a lot more I-term driven movements, because I-term is kind of a self-filtering term. It doesn't really get impacted by gyro noise. And again, they didn't really have filtering back in the day. So you might say, well, why is he bringing up base flight? This is KISS. This has nothing to do with base flight. Oh, but it does. So one of the original things I've noticed when I'm looking between KISS and kind of the PID gains is, I thought I saw this somewhere before, and this was a long time ago when I first started looking at KISS, and I did. You know, when base flight went, and right around when it transitioned from base flight to clean flight, you had about the similar PID gains. You can see here, this is clean flight very early on. I think this is clean flight 1.0, and you know, you can see these PID gains, and you can see the similarity. Now here they had their P-term really low, and the I-term, you know, it was a little bit lower than actually KISS default here, but you can, you know, they just have some different gain magnitude there, or gain numbers, but you can see how the KISS and, you know, early on versions of clean flight and base flight were very similar in the order of magnitude gains that it were using. And again, this was the clean flight, you know, around version 1, where they were implementing the Lux float PID controller, basically using float variables versus, you know, I don't know, computer science stuff. But anyways, they were, you know, expanding into, I guess, some more precision in the math with the Lux float controller. It's the same gain order of magnitude, so I'm thinking it's stuck with that. That's what KISS stayed with, the old clean flight 1 point whatever Lux float controller, and the scalars, it just held that. You know, as clean flight started to evolve more from that and add filtering and other features, and adding air mode, anti-gravity, those were all clean flight things. You know, you don't see those in KISS, and I think that's where the division started, is where KISS was just like keeping focus on the PID controller, that's it, and the open source programs, you know, clean flight, iNav, Betaflight eventually, they started, you know, trying to tackle some of these limitations of the controller, and KISS just, you know, kept it simple with sticking with just the core controller and not having these other things outside of it. So yeah, coming back to this, I mean, that general tendency of where you have just a lot of overshooting, a lot of I-term windup. Like if I, you know, just look at this axis here, the roll axis, and if I turn off the exaggeration, you can kind of see that even more. So if I bring off this exaggeration and kind of isolate this axis, you can see how much lag you have here. You're almost talking a full 100 milliseconds, or 0.1 seconds before it actually gets to the commanded rate, and then it, you know, will overshoot that because there's so much I-term windup here. It drags it over, and then that kind of persists the whole way through, because now it's going to overcorrect, and then you have windup on this side, so on and so forth. Of course, there's overshooting just with the I-term windup, and there's some PD balance issues there as well. So, you know, for this quad, and I would argue more quads than are let on to be, this is the kind of behavior you're seeing, that you're not following the sticks or rates. And I know, you know, some people might say, well, it's just, you know, it's just that quad, and, you know, it's a junky quad. Well, it's fine with Betaflight, so it's not that junky. You can see the noise levels on it are not that bad, so it's fine. It's just how KISS works, and obviously you can work to increase or decrease this gap and this latency and kind of tighten this up, and that's what we did with the tuned version. So what I will do at the end of this video is I will put the HD with the traces overlay, so you can kind of just watch that video with the traces. You can pause, rewind, and kind of look at it versus me just going through and scrubbing through this whole thing. You can check it out if you'd like, but you can see, it's not ideal. KISS, the KISS default was not ideal for this quad for sure, and I would say most of the quads it's not, unless you have a super high power to weight ratio. I don't think it's all that great. In comparison to that, let's look at the Betaflight. Now this is a different flight. It's not the same exact flight, but you can see here, just on defaults, we're doing a much better job at tracking the sticks. We still have some of the same kind of behavior. It's just not nearly as exaggerated, but you can see how there's a big delay here. This is overshooting and dragging past. So it's somewhat similar. It's just a little tighter onto the sticks. Let's stick on this one. So here we don't have it so much. This is a roll move. And you can see here we have over dampened condition there and some delay. It's overshooting up here, but it's not nearly as much. And then it's kind of just a little bit better tracking. Same here. And when you are looking at this kind of stuff, if you are looking at black box, you always want to turn off exaggeration, because exaggeration kind of makes it seem better. And if you turn it off, you can kind of truly see the true shape of how things are one-to-one there. So you can see a lot better tracking just on default. So KISS or Betaflight right out of the box for this quad, and I would say most, would just work better right out of the box to be actually following your sticks and just providing a little cleaner movement. You can see the throbbles were way less, it didn't have any drift, things like that. Again, at the end of this video, I'll do the HD with the overlay on it.